Greetings, fellow mountain climbers. Today we climb the hill of difficulty. Sounds fun, right? Proverbs 6:6 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways, and be wise." Most everyone remembers the story of the grasshopper and the ant. The ant spends his pleasant months preparing for the winter, while the grasshopper squanders away his precious time running up the credit cards and hoping the kids will come out of the government re-education camps with some sanity left. Well, wait a minute. I might have twisted the story a bit, but you know what I mean, don't you? As I drove past all the people waiting in line for gas on my way into the office today, I was reminded once again of the completely upside-down world in which we live. As I went to sleep last night and was reading up on the rocket attacks on Israel, I was reminded once again of the crazy world in which we live. I got an email from one of my favorite news sites today showing a purple, short-haired, overweight lady with earlobes stretched down to her shoulders and an ace bandage wrapped snugly around her chest to hide her breast, upset that someone called her ma'am. And I am reminded once again about the crazy world in which we live. We are living in a land of the therapeutic. Sanity and morality are no longer tolerated in the public square. We must never point out what someone is doing wrong or how they might have avoided disaster if they had put any thought into it, or if we would in any way make them feel bad about stupid choices that they have made. We shouldn't do that. People do not believe in stupid choices anymore. They only believe in stupid consequences. It is the consequences that are wrong, not the actions that led us to them. Everything must be therapeutic and must never reek of precaution or wise avoidance. No one should ever even appear to act as though they are frowning upon some action because of its obvious repercussions. Nope. Today, we must tolerate and respect the actions and then feel pity and do all within our power to remediate or lessen the natural and unavoidable consequences of stupid actions. To call the actions stupid is mean and only shows the cruelty and cold-heartedness of the person declaring that the king has no clothes. It is no longer sub-excellent to have children out of wedlock. Not at all. Even though the statistics show that divorce and fatherless homes are responsible for most of what ails society today, you should never mention it, because you might upset single teenage mothers. You might make them think that they have chosen a lesser path than those who have chosen to do things the right way and stick it out through thick and thin, through better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, for the sake of society and for the children. Oh no, you would never say they were doing it better. How dare you? Christianity itself has fallen into the error of believing that Christian love is only therapeutic. While it is therapeutic, its real power lies in its ability to transform a heart and convince a soul and to turn a mind to live in such a wise and righteous way as to avoid the need to require therapy or pity in the first place. God heals you so that you might avoid therapy, not so you can run right back into it and call that spirituality and religion. Jesus over and over and over again says, your faith has made you whole, therapeutic. Go and sin no more, wisdom. The fact that we can heal things, the fact that we can do our best in bad situations, the fact that we might have made a mistake and need some help, the fact that we might have a medicine for that or a pick-me-up for this doesn't mean that we should never act and move in ways which will free us from both the therapy, but gloriously, through Jesus Christ who saves us, set our lives on a wise and ancient course which will avoid the need for the therapies to begin with. Please hear me spiritually. If you have a therapy you are using to live through diabetes or a therapy to get rid of and live through cancer, then have the wisdom to know that I'm not talking about those kind of therapies. I'm talking about the things in life like pregnancy, VDs, addictions, poor economic choices, relationships built on lust instead of love, or hormonal therapies on children which distort or corrupt the natural body in irreversible ways in order to make it align with some delusional fantasy instead of objective reality. Of course, I don't mean all therapies. You, as an adult listener, know what I'm talking about. Rod Dreher, I hope I'm saying that last name right. Rod writes the following lines about the therapeutic sickness we are witnessing around us and suffering through. He says, even church leaders were lying to themselves about the ability of the institutions, churches mostly, they led to resist the therapeutic. We're supposed to resist it. Rife, the originator of the ideas being discussed by Rod, Rife foresaw the future of religion as devolution into watery spirituality, where we've arrived, which could accommodate anything. Rife lived long enough to see his 1966 prediction come true. In 2005, the sociologist of religion Christian Smith and Melinda Lundquist Denton coined the phrase moralistic therapeutic deism. I'll say that again. They coined the phrase moralistic therapeutic deism to describe the decadent form that Christianity had taken in contemporary America. It consisted of the general belief that God exists and wants nothing more from us than to be nice and to be happy. In therapeutic culture, which has everywhere triumphed, help us, Lord, the great sin is to stand in the way of the freedom of others to find happiness as they wish. This goes hand in hand with the sexual revolution, which, along with ethnic and gender identity politics, replaces the failed economic class struggle as the utopian focus of the post-1960s radical left. These cultural revolutionaries found an ally in advanced capitalism, which teaches that nothing should exist outside of the market mechanism and its sorting of value according to human desires. The Cold War and the fallout from cultural conflicts of the 60s and 70s drove many white conservative Christians to identify with the Republican Party and free market economics as consonant with Christian morality. Relativism clad in free market dogma aided the absorption of the therapeutic ethos by the religious right. After all, if true freedom is defined as freedom of choice as opposed to the classical concept of choosing virtue, then the door is wide open to reforming religion along therapeutic lines centered around subjective experience. This is why so many conservative Christians did not see, and still to this day cannot explain, the ongoing victories of transgenderism in the culture war. The transgender phenomenon, which requires affirming psychology over biological reality, is a logical culmination of a process that started centuries earlier, the long con we've been talking about. True freedom is freedom to pursue the good life through attainment of the classical virtues. True philosophy. Freedom is not the freedom to ignore the virtues and hope everything turns out okay anyway. For some reason, we think we can control a virus, but we don't seem to have any real concept about controlling ourselves. Nothing worth doing is easy. Everything worth having is worth sweating and fighting for. The spiritual walk is no different. The church has done phenomenally well teaching about the therapeutic nature of Christ's sacrifice, and Christ's sacrifice does have a therapeutic nature to it. Some might say that we have done too good a job of teaching that. But if salvation is pure therapeutic and good is never to be attained through sacrifice and saying no to yourself and picking up your cross and hard and bitter struggles, then what of sharing in the sufferings of Christ, which is also taught in the Scripture? We stand as a nation on the brink of discovering what it is to be religiously persecuted by our own citizenry. The eyes have changed in the marketplace. Where once you found either welcoming eyes or fearful glances, you now see hesitant and guarded eyes everywhere you turn. The media and the progressives have done a great job of turning the races against each other. They have done a great job at making the sexes tired of each other. They have even gotten us to attack each other in stores over less than a folded over piece of used toilet paper strapped to our faces, but they haven't healed anything. In fact, I heard some piece of news somewhere where one of our illustrious and omniscient leaders who care so much about us said that Planned Parenthood saves lives. Isn't that weird? When I just did a search to find out how many millions of lives they have taken, innocent lives they have taken, and ran into a headline that celebrated the fact that Planned Parenthood, or Unplanned Parenthood as I like to call them, was very excited about increasing the number of abortions over the coming years. Well, if that ain't newspeak, then I don't know what is. Remember that in the coming days, when a progressive tells you that they are saving lives, what they really mean is that they are increasing the amount of lives they will painfully and mercilessly tear from millions of mothers of wombs in the coming years. The Christian walk is both therapeutic, but it is also demanding. There will be hills of difficulty and literal demons that oppose you in the way. But fear not. Though the way is steep and there are lions on each side of the path, those that stick to the narrow path and the narrow way will receive the power and the protection that they need to make it through. The return to the city of destruction would be foolish. So gear up, gird up your mind, pick up your sword, and let's follow Christian up the hill of difficulty. Chapter 7. There was also in the same place 2 other ways, besides that which came straight from the gate. One turned to the left hand, and the other to the right, at the bottom of the hill. But the narrow way lay right up the hill, and the name of the going up the side of the hill is called Difficulty. Christian now went to the spring and drank thereof to refresh himself. And then he began to go up the hill, saying, This hill, though high, I covet to ascend. The difficulty will not me offend. For I perceive the way to life is here. Come, pluck up my heart. Let's neither faint nor fear. Better, though difficult, the right way to go, than wrong, though easy, where the end is woe. The other 2 also came to the foot of the hill, but when they saw that the hill was steep and high, and that there were 2 other ways to go, and supposing also that these 2 ways might meet again with that up which Christian went on the other side of the hill, therefore they were resolved to go in those ways. Now the name of the one of those ways was Danger, and the name of the other Destruction. So the one took the way which is called Danger, which led him into a great wood, and the other took directly up the way to Destruction, which led him into a wide field full of dark mountains, where he stumbled and fell and rose no more. I looked then after Christian to see him go up the hill, when I perceived he fell from running to going, and from going to clambering upon his hands and his knees, because of the steepness of the place. Now about the midway to the top of the hill was a pleasant arbor, made by the Lord of the hill for the refreshment of weary travelers. Thither therefore Christian got, where also he sat down to rest him. Then he pulled his roll out of his bosom, and read therein to his comfort. He also now began afresh to take a review of the coat or garment that was given him as he stood by the cross, thus pleasing himself a while. He at last fell into a slumber, and thence into a fast sleep, which detained him in that place until it was almost night. And in his sleep his roll fell out of his hand. Now as he was sleeping, there came one to him, and awaked him, saying, Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. And with that, Christian suddenly started up and sped on his way and went apace till he came to the top of the hill. Now when he was got up to the top of the hill, there came two men running to meet him amain. The name of the one was Timorous, and the other one Mistrust, to whom Christian said, Sirs, what is the matter? You run the wrong way. Timorous answered, that they were going to the city of Zion, and had got up that difficult place, but said he, that the further we go, the more danger we meet with, wherefore we turned and are going back again. Yes, said Mistrust, for just before us lie a couple of lions in the way, whither sleeping or waking we know not, and we could not but think, if we came within reach, that they would presently pull us in pieces. Then said Christian, you make me afraid. But whither shall I fly to be safe? If I go back to my own country, that is prepared for fire and brimstone, and I shall certainly perish there. If I can get to the celestial city, I am sure to be in safety there. I must venture. To go back is nothing but death, and to go forward is fear of death and life everlasting beyond it. I will yet go forward. So Mistrust and Timorous ran down the hill, and Christian went on his way. But thinking again of what he had heard from the men, he felt in his bosom for his roll, that he might read therein and be comforted. But he felt and found it not. Then was Christian in great distress, and knew not what to do, for he wanted that which used to relieve him, and which should have been his, pass into the celestial city. Here therefore he began to be much perplexed, and knew not what to do. At last he bethought himself that he had slept in the arbor that is on the side of the hill. And falling down upon his knees, he asked God's forgiveness for that his foolish act, and then went back to look for his roll. But all the way he went back, who can sufficiently set forth the sorrow of Christian's heart? Sometimes he sighed, sometimes he wept, and oftentimes he chid himself for being so foolish as to fall asleep in that place which was erected only for a little refreshment for his weariness. Thus, therefore, he went back, carefully looking on this side and on that, all the way as he went, if haply he might find his roll that had been his comfort so many times in his journey. He went thus till he came within sight of the arbor, where he sat and slept, but that sight renewed his sorrow the more by bringing again even afresh his evil of sleeping into his mind. Thus therefore he now went on bewailing his sinful sleep, saying, O wretched man that I am, that I should sleep in the daytime, that I should sleep in the midst of difficulty, that I should so indulge the flesh as to use that rest for ease to my flesh, which the Lord of the hill hath erected only for the relief of the spirits of pilgrims. How many steps have I taken in vain thus, and happened to Israel for their sin? They were sent back again by way of the Red Sea, and I am made to tread those steps with sorrow, which I might have trod with delight, had it not been for this sinful sleep. How far might I have been on my way by this time? I am made to tread those steps thrice over, which I needed not to have trod but once. Yea, now also I am like to be benighted, for the day is almost spent. Oh, that I had not slept. Now by this time he was come to the arbor again, where for a while he sat down and wept. But at last, as Providence would have it, looking sorrowfully down under the settle, there he espied his roll, the which he with trembling and haste catched up and put into his bosom. But who can tell how joyful this man was when he had gotten his roll again? For this roll was the assurance of his life and acceptance at the desired haven. Therefore he laid it up in his bosom, gave thanks to God for directing his eye to the place where it lay, and with joy and tears betook himself again to his journey. But oh, how nimbly did he go up the rest of the hill. Yet before he got up, the sun went down upon Christian, and this made him again recall the vanity of his sleeping to his remembrance. And thus he again began to condole with himself, O thou sinful sleep! How for thy sake am I like to be benighted in my journey? I must walk without the sun, darkness must cover the path of my feet, and I must hear the noise of the doleful creatures because of my sinful sleep. Now also he remembered the story that Mistrust and Timorous told him of how they were frighted with the sight of the lions. Then said Christian to himself again, These beasts range in the night for their prey, and if they should meet with me in the dark, how should I shift them? How should I escape being them torn in pieces? Thus he went on, but while he was thus bewailing his unhappy miscarriage, he lifted up his eyes, and behold, there was a very stately palace before him, the name of which was Beautiful, and it stood just by the highway side. Well, I hope I wasn't overboard today. Maybe I was, but every time I looked at the news or even looked out the car window today, I felt a little bit like Alice through the looking glass. There are times when I thought that the best wisdom out there was found in Alice's assessment of reality when she bemoans, "It's a great, huge game of chess that's being played all over the world. If this is the world at all, you know?" But that's a little depressing, isn't it? Let's see what Jesus says in times like these. Ah, yes, here it is. "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world." Amen. Godspeed.